Welcome back everyone, Mariah Monetize here, and in today's video we're going over a few things. We're going over what I said in the previous video and if that turned out to be true or not, and I'm also going to be sharing with you one way that you can invest in Bitcoin, which it might be a way that you have not currently thought of, and a way that you can actually get $100 free in Bitcoin. So let's go ahead and get into it today. If you watched my previous video, I believe I said somewhere between 97 and 99,000 was where I anticipated Bitcoin to top. So Bitcoin ended up topping, I think it was like 99,900 and something dollars. So just to give you an idea of what I actually did. Yes, I followed through with my plan that I said that I was going to do. So what I did was I started selling, I believe around 96. Let me go ahead and give you some actual numbers here. So I got out at an average price of $97,000, and with the current price of Bitcoin, I am very, very happy with that decision. So I basically just stacked orders around 96, and then going into probably around low 98s was also where I got out, but the average was at $97,000. So let's go ahead and see here. I started selling at about 96, all the way into the mid 96, 97, mid 97, and 98 was the highest number that I got out at, but with an average price of $97,000. I was extremely happy with that. Game plan followed. So what I did after that was then I put in some buy orders. I put in buy orders starting at 91,555. So I basically stacked between 91,555 all the way down to $80,000. So one of those actually got filled overnight, and I actually went ahead and just flipped it and sold once I got to 93.5. It was a small position, just so that I could have more cash on the sidelines, because I definitely believe that we are going lower. So the question is, how much lower are we going on the price of Bitcoin? But before we get to that, today I want to talk to you guys about iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital is a company that I've been speaking about for the last several years. What's really great about iTrust Capital is that you can take an existing IRA, you can take an existing 401k, and you could transfer it over into iTrust Capital. What I like about iTrust Capital is that there are zero fees. There are zero fees on a monthly basis. There are zero annual fees. And basically what happens is once you transfer, let's say, an existing 401k or IRA into iTrust Capital, you can trade within that account depending on what you have. It is a non-taxable event. And the best part about it is that you can basically trade, obviously a non-taxable event, but there is a fee within the trading. So it's basically a 1% fee when you're buying and selling. But what I love about it is that for most people, they're not going to be buying and selling within their account, and there are no monthly fees, which is absolutely awesome. So basically how it works, my dad's currently transferring his current existing one. I've been telling him for years to do this, and finally he's doing it. He's transferring over his 401k and a Roth over into iTrust Capital. So it's a very simple process. There are videos here that you can watch to guide you through the process. I'm going to go ahead and put a link down below. If you use my link, full transparency, yes, I do receive $200, and you will receive $100 bonus on your account. So you don't have to worry. I'm not getting rich making YouTube videos. So for some people that are like, oh, how can you be gaining from this? Full transparency. I make $200 if you fund your account. Not if you create an account, but if you fund your account. So go ahead and use my link down below for you to receive $100 bonus on your account. So I told you my game plan. I sold Bitcoin for my trading portion at an average cost of $97,000. I have put buy orders between 80 and 91.5. I put, I think, 8 different orders in staggered along the way. One of those got filled at 91,555. It filled. I ended up selling part of that at about, I think, 93.5. And so I myself am open to the idea, actually. So let me show you here what I was looking at. So I just drew a new trend line on my charts here. And so right here was when, so right down here is when my order filled overnight for the 91,555, okay? Then I sold over here at about 93.5. And I was anticipating Bitcoin to touch this current trend line that I drew a while ago. But it didn't quite get there. I had an order set at like 94,888 and it ended up getting up to 94,819. So I barely missed it, which is always a really nice reminder that I should actually create more orders and stagger them a little bit more so I'm more likely to get filled. See, I was trying to catch the top a little bit too much. But as you can see here, what Bitcoin previously did on the 5-minute chart was it went and retested that trend line. So what we saw here was this. So I had this trend line drawn when I made my previous video. Let's go ahead and look at it on the daily chart. So like I mentioned, what we are looking for when we draw trend lines is, sure, it can break on the 5-minute, on the hourly, on the 4-hour, but nothing is more convincing to me than when it closes below on the daily chart. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. As you can see here, you can go ahead and see this trend line here, and you could see that this was yesterday's daily candle. It closed below the trend line, all right? So I do believe that we are going lower, but I also drew another trend line. So let's go ahead and go back to the 5-minute chart. So what I was anticipating was it to retest up here. It broke below, obviously. It broke below over here. And then it kept on retesting that trend line, which I anticipated to do here, but it didn't quite get there. Missed that opportunity just by a smidge, but I'm okay. It was a small position. What I also have drawn here is now the downward trend line. So this one is, I wouldn't say extremely accurate because I want to see more touch points. So as you can see here, this was an upward trend line. I also drew this one. So once Bitcoin starts like kind of just going like straight up, then I start drawing these trend lines. Like this was a longer range one, but at this point, Bitcoin would have to drop so low for me to get that indicator that I think we're going lower. So I saw another trend line here, which I drew on the hourly, which was also very telling. As you can see, it broke below here, and then it continued to break below after that. So what I have now drawn is a downward trend line. So what am I looking for? What I am anticipating is that Bitcoin to probably go down into the 80s, okay? So what I'm anticipating, and over here, is once Bitcoin breaks above this trend line, which like I said, I believe is going to happen in this range, then it's time to get back in. As long as Bitcoin is trading below this trend line, right? It's gonna just go up and down here in this range. I'm not interested. I do have those buy orders set where they are because those are prices that I would be happy to get into, but I might actually start adjusting them depending on how Bitcoin behaves. I think it's really easy for people to watch myself and other YouTubers and be like, wow, they change their mind so frequently. Yeah, absolutely, because Bitcoin's price changes every single second, and something could happen that makes me change my game plan. So a nice point to make is that the stock market is closed on Thursday and Friday is half a day. So things are going to be trading a little wacky this week because of how short of a week it is, and Thursday being off and Friday being a half day. So take that into consideration. Things will potentially be a little bit more volatile, and we are definitely pay attention because I've seen this already happen on several different occasions. So you have to understand that the Asian market opens up at 4 p.m. West Coast time, because I'm currently on the West Coast. So 4 p.m. West Coast time, there is definitely a lot more volatility as soon as the Asian markets open. Okay, so keep that in mind. 4 p.m. West Coast time. Translate to that, whatever your time zone is, that there's a lot of volatility in that range. One thing we're also kind of seeing is that Bitcoin isn't necessarily correlating when it comes to SPY, which is great. I love to see Bitcoin kind of have a mind of its own. Another good point is that, like, who else was going to buy at 100K? I mean, everyone was so bullish. Everyone had all these live streams going of like, oh, we're going to watch Bitcoin break 100K live. I really didn't anticipate that to happen. That's why I said I was selling before that. And if it was, maybe overshoot into like 101, 102, maybe even up to 105, but the pullback was imminent because who else is buying there, right? So that's what I'm looking for. Like I said, I'm anticipating. I'm going to say probably the great buying opportunity is coming in the next 10 to 14 days. and I expect it to be kind of just down here in this range. I highly encourage you on the 1 hour chart to draw this line here on your chart. This is the thing. So what I currently drew on this hourly, there's 2 touch points, right? It touches here, it touches here. This is currently, in my opinion, an okay trend line. What I want to see is Bitcoin touch that trend line at least 1 more time, maybe 2 more times for it to be extremely accurate. So this is a downward trend line that I have drawn, but I'm not taking it too seriously until we maybe have 1 more touch point. I think 3 to 4 touch points makes it a lot more significant. So like you could see here, I found this trend line to be very significant because look, it touched like on the hourly 1 or 2 times here, 2 times over here. Like the more times that the price touches the trend line that you draw, the more significant it becomes. So also keep that in mind as well. And then what I've also drawn here is I basically have some Fibonacci levels within the Fibonacci levels. And how do you do that? So let me go ahead and show you. Fibonacci levels, for me, are most useful when it comes to predicting new all-time highs. Obviously, when Bitcoin is a new all-time high range, it makes it a little bit tricky to predict. So what did I do over here? Let me go and pull this out here to the daily. So I have basically what I did, this particular Fibonacci level was, let me just delete it. So if you're on TradingView, you go over here, you go to Fibonacci retracement. And so what I did was I grabbed this high. Okay, see how this is a swing high? And this is the pullback over here. So for me personally, I prefer to use this level right here, which is about 52.7. And that's because I prefer to use that over this wick down here. But you can kind of keep an eye on both if you'd like. That's totally up to you. But that's just personally how I prefer to draw my fib retracement. So up here, draw it down to the swing low, and you can kind of, predict Bitcoin's all-time highs. But then I drew another fib retracement over here where basically Bitcoin swing high and then a pullback. And so that is something else that I am keeping an eye on as well. But for me, I'm tending to prefer the trend lines a little bit more. They're a little bit easier to follow. I feel like I'm able to get indicators quicker of the move that I would prefer to make. So like I said, I have buy orders set in that range, and I may change them, but for now I'm going to go ahead and keep them where they're at, and just keep an eye here on this downward trend line to see where Bitcoin breaks it. So let me go ahead and maybe show you another example of the downward trend line on maybe like a stock that I have drawn in the past, just so you can kind of get an idea of like how it plays out. So here is one example. This was some options trading that I was doing on UNH, United Health Group Incorporated. So I drew this downward trend line. And so this works well, in my opinion, when you are doing swing trading, okay? This is not something that I really like to do when it comes to day trading. I think it's way more accurate when you're doing longer swing positions. And I started buying contracts like a month or 2 out. And so that is how I like to play this. It will take sometimes 1 or 2 months for this to play out. So as you can see here, it broke and it closed above on, that was the hourly. Let me go ahead and pull the daily up. All right, so I drew this downward trend line. You could see 1, 2, 3, 4 touch points. To me, that is a strong trend line that I'm going to have a lot of trust and faith in, okay? So as you can see here, this would not be the time to enter because it did not close above on the daily. You could see it closed just below the trend line. But as you can see, the time to get in was the next day when it closed on the daily above the trend line. Obviously, the next day would have been a lot of volatility, but you are getting in somewhere between 578, 586, and 2 days later, obviously, 604 was where it went up to. So a really good play. There was obviously a pullback in the meantime, or several days later, but then it had another jump up as well. And like I said, this is something you want to play more in the long term, because if you bought a contract several days out, you could obviously see over here that it had a high of 630. So that's kind of like how I play it. Like this is an example to where Like I could have bought some options that were like going to expire a month or two out. But in this case, if I'm buying on this day, I would prefer just to get out here. I would be so up here that it's just like set a stop loss. Like I just rather take my gains. So that is basically an example there. Let's go ahead and take a closer look here on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin currently sitting at 92,266. So on the daily, obviously, we're having a bit of a pullback here, but I'm still anticipating more to the downside. And this is the thing. Okay, so we have support basically over in this range over here, right? We have some support anywhere between like 88 and 90 in that range, but it breaks below this and we are going low. I mean, we do have this moving average to potentially prop us up, but if we break that, like there's nothing. We're just going to be dropping like a rock. So Bitcoin really, really needs to hold this low over here. I would say like 86, or else we're probably going to like 73. I would say is highly, highly likely. So that is Bitcoin on the daily. Here's a 12-hour, not too different of a chart there. And let's go ahead and look at the hourly. So just trending down on the hourly, right? I think it's important that you draw that trend line. It's like, you don't have to play the trend line, but I would say just draw it and keep an eye on it as like just some practice. If you're not really interested in trading it, just take a look at it. This is a 30-minute here. Basically, let's see if Bitcoin needs to hold the low of this candle right here, which is at 91,420. Let's take a look at the 5, trending downward on the 5. So I'm anticipating, like, I don't think Bitcoin is going to like immediately just crash down to like 80,000. I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to get there. But like I said, sometime in the next probably 10 to 14 days, it could come sooner, which I have no problem with. I'm ready, right? I have those buy orders set. To me, it's important to, one, stagger them. I myself need to stagger my orders even more than I currently am. And because remember, it's probably always going to happen when you are sleeping, which happened to me yesterday, right? I don't want to be on my phone watching 24 hours a day. Like I like to sleep. I like to sleep at least 8 hours. That's my gig. So like I mentioned earlier, you can go ahead and transfer an existing 401k, IRA, or start a new account at iTrust Capital. You don't have to necessarily transfer. You can actually just create a new account and deposit into it. And if you use my link, you get a $100 bonus. So it's a win-win for both of us. Happy Thanksgiving. And as always, go out there and create a portfolio that you love.